As our series continues to hop around the world, we find ourselves at one of the more historic venues, and that being the Hockenheimring in Germany, a place of fame and song and story. Welcome, everyone, to Friday Night Primetime, featuring the Stock Car Brasil series. My name is DJ Clark. Joining me here in the booth tonight, as always, is Zach Sweeney, and our director and producer, Connery Maddock, is behind the scenes here tonight. This circuit has played host to Formula One. It is a traditional home of German DTM. But tonight, Zach, we set loose the Brazilian stock cars around this venue.
Yeah, it's a fantastic circuit. Of course, extremely historic. Had the modern change. Some people hate it. Some people see it as a modern classic. I personally absolutely love this layout of the circuit. It's going to bring some fantastic racing. And of course, as we always say, week in, week out, that run to the hairpin with Bush to pass is going to be fantastic.
Indeed it is. There you can see the rest of our schedule next week. You are not going to want to miss that as we take these cars to Bathurst. That is going to be a whole bunch of fun. But as of now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's focus on what is going on right here today, and that is these cars coming around this circuit. A couple of tricky areas, a couple of tricky braking zones in particular, going down through the Mercedes-Benz Arena section, as well as through the Mobil 1 curve and the Sachs curve. But as you alluded to, plenty of area to get some good top speed going down through the Parabolica. And there you see the number 2 machine. That is Jeffrey Temieto working his way through the Sachs curve and down through the South curve right now, waiting for the first couple of drivers to put some times down on the board. Magalis putting down the fastest time. He is the one to beat. Temieto looking like he is going to be P3 for now. Some pretty big gaps, as it looks like Ronaldo Carlos able to hold out about a 1.5 second advantage over everybody else right now, but still plenty of time, about half of this qualifying session left to go.
Yeah, of course, they get 2 laps in this session, so of course they're going to take it a little bit easier on the first one, just to give themselves that banker time. Not going to have to rely on everything on that final lap, because it's very pressuring in order to have all the pressure piled onto that, just that one single lap at the end. So it's good to have that banker. It's good to just have a time on the board, and then you can try and improve upon that, because then you're secure for the race. But qualifying, a circle like here, it is possible to overtake. Qualifying isn't going to tell the whole story, and the grid isn't particularly massive either. If you have a pretty poor qualifying, you haven't got that many people between you and the front.
Indeed, and this is going to be one of those areas, I think, that you talked about, that is going to be some prime overtaking spot going down into that Mercedes Arena section. We always see some good fightbacks there, specifically coming out of the Spitzkehre, some good side-by-side. This is where it gets a little bit trickier, as you get deposited back on out, and then coming through the wickedly fast Mobil 1 curve. Always very, very tricky. You always think you can take a little bit more speed through that corner than you actually can.
Very easy to get overconfident, and then as soon as you get there, you realize that curb is there, the gravel trap is also there, and you've carried just a little bit too much speed through. And also, as you go in, the wall sort of protrudes out a little bit. It's very frustrating to just tap your front left on that wall. Trust me, it is just painful. But yeah, it is a very tough circuit, especially into that sequence of corners. That last section really is brutal in general. And into the Sachs curve, as we see Velo go into P2, still a massive gap between themselves and Carlos. 1.2 seconds. It seems the number 6 has got a pretty firm grasp on pole position at the moment.
It certainly does, but let's see if this man, currently the highest I-rated driver in this field, Guto de Carvalho, trying to work his way around. That's not going to help him out at all. Going through the Einfahrt Parabolica, little bit of a bobble there, and that's a pretty easy thing to do. These cars like to take curbs a little bit, but the curbs here at Hockenheim can be a little bit tall and definitely take you out if you are not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And these cars definitely will not hesitate to spit you back out if you make even the slightest mistake. We'll see how he negotiates the hairpin, because this is going to be one of the most key traction zones of the circuit. You've got to be careful of that sausage curb on the left-hand side as well. But for Carvalho, that mistake probably will cost him, because that is the area where you need good traction out of turn 2 and 3, because you mess that up and you've killed your momentum all the way through the Parabolica and all the way down to the hairpin. It's one of the most crucial areas where it is so important to get a good exit. Might have ruined his qualifying chance, could still possibly get it into a decent position, but in the race, if you mess that one up, expect to at least lose one place.
Yeah, exactly. And that, I think, will be the area that we see that infamous push to pass being applied the most coming out of turn 2 there. Definitely the area that you're going to want to have that extra horsepower advantage as Carvalho works his way now through that final tricky section down into the south curve here, leading his way back onto the start-finish straightaway. Car dancing around a little bit under him as he tries to beat the best time set down on the board of a 144. Looks like that lap is going to be good enough for P5, so plenty of work still to do for him. Waiting here, looks like Suinga is going to be out there. So nobody on track right now as the qualifying session draws to a close. Just waiting for the last couple of seconds to tick down before we take you to your grid here at Hockenheim. As always, it'll be a 30-minute race around this circuit, and there goes the flag. Qualifying officially over, so let's go ahead and bring you the official starting grid for today's race. It will be Ronaldo Carlos starting off in pole position, followed by Alex Vello. Jeffrey Tamietto will be in P3, followed by Marcelo Magales in P4. Guto de Carvalho will be fifth, followed by Dario Valente in sixth. Seventh place will be Antonio Marino, followed by Aurelian Schmidt. And bringing up the back of the field, not setting a time today, it will be Andre Suenga, as that will round out your 9-car field. A little bit of a smaller field, but rest assured this place is going to pack some surefire action around here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we look forward to every Friday evening. Well, afternoon more so for you, but you know, this circuit, this car, it promotes fantastic racing. You know, we've had the last 2 weeks at Austria and Spa. Both of them have been absolute bangers. We've had fights for the race lead and action up and down. But yeah, with the smaller grid, you know, yeah, you could argue not the most ideal thing in the world, but you can rest assured that you looked in qualifying, Carlos aside, second downwards was actually really, really close. So I actually genuinely think we've got a really good fight on our hands today between everyone. And of course, this circuit's going to promote it.
Yeah, it certainly is. And there you take a look at the number 4 machine, Alex Vello, currently in P2 in that second place position. Just waiting for a few more drivers. Looks like De Carvalho waiting for him to get onto the grid before we can get going. There he pops into place, and we get ready to go. A shortened pace lap here. What are the keys to this race? Is it patience? Is it aggression? What is going to be the best way to get forward?
Well, turn 1 here is a little bit sketchy. It's very fast, but it's also quite tight. So if you send one to the inside, you can probably expect to have your front nose chopped off. So at least for turn 1, we're going to see probably single file, maybe a couple of people looking up the inside if they can, but the main action will definitely be down into turn 2, definitely through the parabolica, and most certainly down to that heavy braking zone of turn 6.
Indeed it will, as Ronaldo Carlos leading us to the flag here. Vello looking like he was a little bit ahead there, but I think that's just a little bit of gamesmanship. Waiting for the iRacing pace car to pull off into the pit lane, and there it goes. Control of the field will go over to Ronaldo Carlos. Big check up there in the back of the pack that forced off, I believe, a couple of drivers. And there we are onto the loud pedal. The flag is in the air. We are racing in Hockenheim. There they go. Carlos gets a great breakaway. Jeffrey Tamietto able to pull ahead of Alex Vello as they dive down into that first corner. A little bit of side-by-side, a little bit of argy-bargy there for second place. De Carvalho and Magales fighting as well for P4 out on track. A little bit of side-by-side there into the parabolica entry as we start to get going down that long parabolica.
Here we go. You can see the 2 and the 4 really going at it on this opening lap. Vello and Tamietto really going for it. It's invited Carvalho to get involved as well. Carlos has really ran away with it at the start. He's doing a fantastic job. Here comes the number 1 of Carvalho. You can see Vello in the number 4 having to go semi-defensive. He's got to look. I think Carvalho's just going to follow him through, use that open gap. In fact, is he? They're going to be 3 abreast through the hairpin. The number 1 sends it to the inside. He's going to go for 2 in 1 there. Gets the place. Completely ruins Vello's momentum there. You can see a bit of flash the headlights. He's definitely not happy with that one. And Tamietto definitely wants to get back into the mix.
Certainly does. Tamieto now on the full assault here. We've seen plenty of times you can get a pass done. And speaking of that, there goes Magalis down to the inside of Valente there, trying to get that move done, so able to make that up, trying to push ahead here as they work their way out of the Mercedes Arena section and now start to go here into that tricky Mobile 1 curve. You don't want to be too wide going down into that corner. Everybody's spacing themselves out a little bit. A couple of drivers looking a little bit wide as they now make their way down into the Sachs curve.
Yeah, everyone keeping it really, really nice and clean for this opening lap here, really being sensible, realizing the long game is going to be incredibly important, but they certainly are still being aggressive but fair. We have got a spin. Is this, I think this is Schmidt now going round out of the Sachs curve. Indeed it is. That is a poor start for them, but that's what happens. This part of the circuit really is tricky. We alluded to it in qualifying. I think we're going to have a look to see how it happened through. Yeah, you can just see going very wide, a little bit offline. Maybe invited someone else to come through. Don't quite think so. A bit over the curb, had a bit too much speed in, and around it goes. The rear of these cars are incredibly sensitive.
Yeah, they are, and the Sachs curve there really deceives you a little bit. It makes you think you can pull up and carry a lot of speed in there because of the on-camber nature of the corner, but you do really have to woe the car down. But we check back in on the leaders right now. Carlos pulling out a whopping 2.5-second gap there. You can see him in that number 6 machine, but the battle is definitely on for P2. Still a little bit of pass there in the back. That is Valente locking it up and missing the apex altogether.
Yeah, that is a clumsy mistake you don't want to be doing. He's turned a move for P4 down into him, losing those places down into P6. Double front lockup, very easy to do, especially when you're getting a little bit too ambitious on the brake pedal. But he was aggressive, he was willing to go for it. But is this just a little bit too overly aggressive? You can see, just look at how much that slipstream, maybe a bit of push to pass is helping him as well. Completely sends it in under brakes. Probably sees the car in front of him, gets a little bit scared and presses a little bit too hard on the brake pedal. But that's unfortunate for him. A very easy mistake to do, but a very, very costly one at that.
And I can confirm, by the way, that Valente there did use push to pass, so that's why he was closing at such a rate of knots. As we continue to watch this battle for the podium positions, De Carvalho and excuse me, I can't speak today. De Carvalho, they're leading the way with Alex Vello behind him. Jeffrey Tamieto looking like he's dropping back a little bit in that number 2 machine, but still close enough to be able to attack as Carlos sets the fastest lap of the race.
To the surprise of, I think, absolutely nobody. He is on fire in this opening stage of the race, and we can see this is Vello looking to get up the inside of Carvalho in towards turn 2. It should be a pretty plain sailing move up the inside. Here he goes. Is it going to be hard fought by the number 1? Of course it is, all the way around the outside of turn 2 into 3, then through the left of 4. They're going to fight this one all the way down. You can see the number 4 keeping his foot in. 2 by 2 they go, because here comes Malagales around the outside of Tamieto, side by side. A brilliant aerial view as they go through the parabolic. You can see on the inside is the number 4 of Vello. He's going to have the inside for the hairpin here at turn 6. How late can he brake? It's going to be late enough. He's going to get himself into second place, but the number 1 once again, the outer line, bit of a tap between the 2, bit sideways from the number 1, and Vello into second place.
Good move there from Vello, but now De Carvalho has to worry about Tamieto all up behind his exhaust right now as they dive their way down through the right-hander. Very wide line there behind from Magalis as they try to make it around. Doesn't look like Tamieto is too aggressive on the attack here. Happy to sit behind and just apply a little bit of pressure to Guto as they continue to work their way around. Vello not looking like he's been able to really pull away that much, and crucial to note here that Alex Vello and Guto de Carvalho have not used their push to pass yet. It looks like Jeffrey Tamieto has used 1 up to this point.
Yeah, exactly, and it's been the common theme for this series that you've got to save that push to pass until the very end. You've got to use it at the dying moments, because that's when it counts. You do not want to be left as a sitting duck without any push to pass in those final 5 minutes, because it's proven to be costly for those that haven't managed to be able to do it. But you can see now the number 1 really falling off the likes of the number 4 of Vello, who's now inherited second place, falling back into the clutches of Tamieto and Magalhães just behind as they go through turn 1. to start yet another lap. But yeah, it's weird that this has happened because we saw Carvalho really have some good pace. Tamietto also fell off towards the start of this race as well. So it's weird that he's fallen off this much. Hopefully he can get back onto the back of Velo, but I think really right now we're just preparing ourselves for a fight for second because Carlos is doing a fantastic job out in front, and we'll see if there's going to be any action down and towards turn 6 because it's going to be one of those prime overtaking opportunities for today.
It looks like the closest driver there is Magalas, as he's going to have a little bit of a look to the inside of Tamietto there, locks up the brakes as he go in. Oh, and just misses the corner. That seems to be a bit of a theme here today. These brakes not exactly cooperating, going down into the Spitzkehre, the 3 off into the dirt there. That'll drop him all the way down into 6th place. That is Soenga that you're going to see popping in the back of your screen there. So he has now got a whopping 6 seconds to try to make up. Let's ride on board with this. Just looks like a little bit too late of a break. He was lucky not to run into the back of Tamietto.
Yeah, I think it was just at that point, don't hit anyone. And then this is the probably the more comical bit is the fact he can't really decide where he wants to go, and that car doesn't really want to cooperate in turning around and getting back onto the circuit. But Marcelo, yeah, that is a costly mistake, one that we have. It's not the first time we've seen it today, and that will prove dividends because the slipstream is so powerful in these cars. You have such a boost in speed that your normal braking point doesn't work. You brake and you've got, I don't know, 5-10 extra miles an hour down into that corner. You need to get that stopped, and unfortunately it comes up very quickly. You see the rear end of the car in front of you come up really quickly and you just panic. You dart to the right as to not smack into him, and yeah, that is just one of those costly mistakes. And yeah, yet another car we've lost from this train. Carvalho has kept Alex honest. He's still within that sort of that 1 second range, so he's there, and any mistake could bring him back into it. And as we noticed, he's now got 6 push to passes over Velo's 5. So, you know, one mistake from Alex could certainly bring the number 1 back into this.
Yeah, indeed, and it looks like Velo here using that push to pass as we speak, trying to extend that gap a little bit to break out of that draft range. I like that decision for him. Also, Tamietto looked like in the back there using his push to back to try to catch up to Guto de Carvalho. So trying to see if there is anything to be had. A little bit of blinking there in the back for Tamietto, unfortunately. Don't love to see that, but they are certainly closing in on each other. I'm a little bit surprised that the gap between Velo and Guto is only 1.5 seconds, especially considering Alex Velo was using that push to pass down the long parabolica.
Yeah, absolutely. He's certainly kept him honest and is still there. In fact, actually, Carlos has lost a bit of time to Velo as well, probably attributed to the fact that Velo has used a push to pass, but he's not exactly running away with it as much as we perhaps thought. A bit of a lockup from the number 4 into the Sachs curve as well, with will unfortunately lose him a little bit of time, but it's sort of stalemated at the moment. Carlos just had such an insane run. You saw he backed everyone up. Very, very well done, just to back everyone up, waited, went, and caught everyone off guard. Everyone fought behind him, and that has now given him the very crucial 4-second breathing space that he needs. Can't get complacent at all, cannot take his foot off the gas pedal at all. But it does give him a bit of breathing room. He's under a lot less pressure now, and it's just about managing, making sure you don't make any mistakes at all. And Velo now is the one that's going to have to push very hard, and that's when the mistakes will start to creep in.
Yeah, exactly. And you saw a little bit of that mistake from Ronaldo Carlos, a little bit of a lockup going down into the parabolica entry there, just costing him a little bit of time. He's still able to have that 4.3 second advantage, which is good, but it has to be said, on the last lap, Alex Velo able to set down a purple sector 2, so that's certainly going to allow him to close in a little bit more. That gap seesawing around the 4-second marker as of right now. Alex Velo there also has to be looking in his rearview mirrors as Carvalho only 1.2 seconds behind. He has been able to keep that gap relatively stationary, and Carvalho not using any of that push to pass. He still has all 6 pushes to pass left to go, and that can be absolutely crucial, as we always talk about. That is the big unknown here in this series. The big wild card is using that at the correct times, and I think for Guto, as long as he is able to control that and manage that gap as long as he can, that means that he will be in prime striking distance with more pushes to pass.
Absolutely, and it's going to leave Velo just a little bit more vulnerable, going to put a little bit more pressure on, and that's exactly what Carvalho is doing. He's there. He's not, you know, very easily could use a push to pass, get back into slipstream range, put the pressure on. He doesn't want that. He's there. He's definitely prevalent in Alex Velo's rearview mirror. He's putting the pressure on very subtly, just to say, I'm here. You want to go and catch, but you've got to be careful not to make too many mistakes, because I will come for you. I will get into that second place. And as soon as we get sort of to the last 15, 10, 5 minutes, he then has that one push to pass in hand. That one push to pass will very easily gain him, what, 6, 7 tenths perhaps we've seen in some extreme cases. And even then, look at how much he's managed to gain through this first sector alone. And even then, Velo has used another push to pass himself. So this is even more advantage to Carvalho.
Yeah, it is. That'll be a 2 push to pass advantage there for the number 1. The gap does expand back up to about 1.2, 1.4 seconds as they get to the braking zone down into the Spitzkehre. But this strategic battle continuing to play out. Guto just seeming to have more speed overall, especially through the twisty bits, and that could be a little bit of setup. Remember, this is an open setup series. Could be running just a little bit more mechanical grip around here. Not a whole lot of aerodynamics to work with in these Brazilian stock cars, but plenty of little tweaks and tunes to make on the mechanical grip side. Is indeed going through the Mercedes arena section there. The number 4 looking a little bit squirrely, looking a little bit unstable.
Yeah, it does certainly look like it's teetering on the edge of a knife, but that's how to sometimes be quick. But again, iRacing, it is very much smooth is fast. It's often the laps where they're taking it a little bit easier, just making sure the car, because look, what line was that? He had come completely sideways out of the Sachs curve, was on the left-hand side, and it completely messed up his run through the next sequence of corners there. So that car certainly is certainly a little bit unstable, but again, it's a 30-minute race. You can get away with having a more twitchy car if it's going to give you a little bit more pace. It's not like an endurance race where you need comfortability. Yes, it would be nice in a series like this, but half an hour, you're going to be sprinting to the end, pushing as hard as you can pretty much for the entire thing. So he's paid off a little bit with a more teary setup, but is that going to work for him? You need to be able to tame that sort of setup, and any mistake like this, and the more comfortable setups like the likes of Carvalho might have, will certainly bring him back into it. And Carvalho seems to have the psychological advantage in this as well.
Yeah, he certainly does. Still not on the push-to-pass button. Carlos, though, being caught a little bit by Alex Velo, it has to be said. The gap is under 4 seconds for the first time, really, since the start of the race for the most part. So some mistakes there coming in from Ronaldo Carlos, potentially, as this battle continues to rage on. Very, very close, although I will say Ronaldo still has 6 pushes to pass left to go, so he's going to have plenty of defensive opportunity to use that button if Velo is able to close in a little bit.
Yeah, and perhaps Carvalho is seeing that Alex Velo is catching Carlos and just says, okay, I'll hold off for now. If we can go and catch him and you can put some pressure on, then we can both gain out of this. And that's the thing. That's what's really impressed me with Carvalho today, is his racecraft and his patience. He saved those push to passes and perhaps is using Alex as sort of a tow truck to get onto the back of Carlos, if it's possible. Might not be, because Ronaldo Carlos is doing a fantastic job out in front. Still yet to use a push to pass. Seems pretty much unfazed by the pressure. But again, we're only halfway through this race. We're not even halfway through. We still have another 47 seconds until that point. So still a long way to go. Can't get complacent. Yeah, Alex Velo, when he hooks up a lap, certainly has got the pace to go and catch. It's just, as you say, that push to pass really going to set him up a big disadvantage if and when he can go and catch Carlos.
Yeah, exactly. And for anybody thinking about the rest of the field, pretty big gaps all the way down. Tamieto about 6 seconds off of de Carvalho there, and so not really able to be in place for that. Valente after that off, also about 5 seconds behind Tamieto, so very, very spaced out. This is the best battle that we have right now. Is now Guto down the Parabolica, is going to be out of draft range. He's about 1.5 seconds behind there, and so that's not going to be helping him at all in terms of the draft. Just needs to really hook up here on the Spitzkehre really late on the binders there. That was a very, very good run. Able to take a couple of tenths of a second out of Velo's lead ahead of him. Bring that gap down from about 1.5 seconds down to about 1.3 right here. And that is that kind of psychological battle that you talked about, Zach. Really just trying to eke in those seconds to make Velo be looking in his relative, be looking behind him the entire time, and not just focus on putting in the best laps he can up ahead.
Exactly, and that's, you know, in my personal experience of Hockenheimring racing in general, that's exactly what you've got to do. Half of the story is actually the psychological battle. Put the pressure on, as I was saying earlier, fill his rearview mirror. Say, you know, you're doing a fantastic job there, mate. You're catching the guy in front, but, you know, don't mess it up because, you know, I'm here, I'm ready, I'll pick up the pieces if you give me that opportunity. Just, hey, look at our push to passes. You've got 4, I've got 6, mate. This is certainly advantage me. And he's there chipping away, showing a bit of a glimmer at his good pace. And Velo's there. He's as you say, he's looking backwards as well as forwards, which is then when the mistakes start to creep in. When you're under pressure, when you can see the car behind you gain a couple of tenths, it's then, that is a bit of an issue. And then that's when you start, you know, doubting yourself, going into a corner, a slight lock up here, slight bit of oversteer here, going a bit too deep here. And it really does allow the car behind just to cruise up onto the back of you and put that pressure on slowly but surely. And still with 30 minutes left to go, Carvalho, I'm going to put him as a predicted P2. Velo once again using yet another push to pass. Carlos has used 2, not entirely sure as to why, maybe to set some good laps or something, but Alex Velo using yet another one certainly is strange.
Yeah, it is. I think he's really starting to feel that pressure, probably wanting to break that slipstream as much as possible, because as they exited the parabolic entry, Carvalho able to get that gap down to under a second, and that means he would have been in effective draft range. With the use of the push pass now, Alex Velo able to get that gap back up to about 1.5, 1.6 seconds. Loses a little bit going there through the arena section, but still able to be closing in behind. He has also been able to get that gap down to Carlos to under 4 seconds. Once again, it had climbed back up. It's now down to about 3.6, 3.7 seconds as they come now down through Mobile 1 and into the Sachs curve. Trying to catch up behind is Guto here, just putting on all of that pressure that he can, that you talked about. Good exit there out of the corner. You do want to take a little bit of that extra curbing as you work your way around.
Yeah, certainly, and it really is just a stalemate between these three. Very similar on pace, of course. If Velo and Carvalho got a better start off the line, it could be a completely different story in this race. But Carlos having that breathing room has allowed this stalemate to not really phase him that much. The gap's just staying as it is. He's not really under much pressure. If he makes a couple of mistakes and Velo then gets back into it, that's when things will start getting a little bit more interesting. But at the moment, it's just stagnated between these guys. Velo will catch a little bit, then Carlos is like, okay, I'll respond with a bit of a better lap and bring that gap back up. So in terms of pure pace, I don't think we've got enough time in order for Velo to actually catch up. But if Carlos makes a mistake, then it will certainly bring not only Velo but also Carvalho back into this race and make it very interesting, especially if Carvalho can get into the mix. I would love to see that with his 6 push to passes. Maybe he's just a sleeping giant. Maybe he's just there. Maybe he's just waiting. And then when the time is right, he's going to use that and he's going to come blitzing through.
It very well could be, and you know, these drivers will have a little bit of a sense of when they have used it as they start to really pull away massively there on the straightaway. That'll probably be in the back of Guto's mind. Okay, he's down on push to pass, he's been using it, etc., etc., etc. So that battle of strategy continuing to play out. And I've got to say that Guto's pace is good enough to just keep himself nice and close behind here. But as we tick closer to the 10 minutes to go mark, I've got to think that is a big, big brake lock up there in front. That was Aurelian Schmidt, a lapped car up in front through the Sachs curve. There you can see the dust and the brake smoke. This could present a little bit of a change in scenario as Alex Velo comes up behind that slower machine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about timing in terms of traffic. Not something I'd particularly expect to see in a half-an-hour race, but you can see Velo making quick work of Schmidt there, getting through. And it's all about timing in terms of traffic. You talk about it all the time in endurance racing, not so much in half-an-hour races like these, but if you catch it mid-corner, you're going to be in a whole world of trouble compared to when you catch it on a straight. So luckily, Schmidt managed to move out the way and let our leaders through in good time. But if Carlos caught him mid-corner and he gained a ton, and then had to slam on the anchors, Velo very easily could have been onto the back of him. Fortunately for them, unfortunately for us, because we're robbed of a bit of action. But fortunately for Carlos, it hasn't really changed much. A couple of attempts, naturally, but Carlos can afford a couple of attempts. He wants to be on the safe side. There's no need for him to send one to the inside of Schmidt, because if it goes wrong, it goes really wrong.
Exactly. And speaking of that couple of tenths there, Guto able to take a couple of tenths out of Alex Velo as they exit the Spitzkara. That is going to be the number 1 down within a second. And still having those 6 pushes to pass, ready to go, ready to attack here. Good line coming down into the arena, able to gain up a little bit more. I think the race is very much on here for P2.
Absolutely, it certainly has been for the last 15 minutes or so. Carvalho has been there, he's put the pressure on, and now he needs to maximise every opportunity they've got. They've got the breathing space back to Tamieto and certainly to Valente behind, who are really not at all in this race. So it is between the top 3 out in front. But Carvalho, bit of a lock-up now, might get a bit too greedy. You know, he's there, he's confident in himself, he's certainly in the mix, he's got the advantage. 3 push-to-passes, that's insane. That is a massive advantage, especially this late into the race. He's really going to be able to exploit that, really going to be able to manipulate that to his advantage and put the pressure on. And yeah, I mean, Velo is catching on Carlos, but I think because time isn't really at all on their side, he's not going to be able to do much and might just have to bite the bullet and say, right, I'm going to need to keep Carvalho behind.
Oh, something happened to Carvalho there.
A disconnect?
I think it may be a disconnect.
Yeah, I think, yeah, he's tumbling down. He's not come back on. It's not just a blip, so it must be.
Oh my goodness, depriving us there of the action. Carvalho still not coming onto our screens. That is, and it's not a penalty issue there for him. Otherwise, we would have seen him down pit lane. I'm not seeing anything else. I'm waiting for the official iRacing system to show us that he has disconnected. But my goodness gracious, that is massive for this race with about 8 minutes to go.
Absolutely, and Velo using yet another push to pass, hasn't got the pressure from Carvalho behind, so can now set his sights well and truly firmly forward and try and get after Ronaldo Carlos just in front. 1.7 seconds is the gap, is the closest it's been all race, and well, maybe he can put some pressure on, but don't forget the number 6, Carlos, can just respond, use a couple of push to passes, put in a couple of good laps, and take off into the distance. But you know, the gap certainly is there, and now Velo is doing to Carlos what Carvalho was doing to Velo, in that he's there, he's in the rearview mirrors, and he's certainly gained a lot, and that will certainly be tearing in the back of Carlos's mind for the rest of this race.
Indeed it will, and I can report we have officially gotten the word connection drop due to upload packet loss. That was an internet connection issue for Guto de Carvalho there, and that is him out of this race. A very, very unfortunate incident there, but the battle is still not over. As you said, Alex Velo setting the fastest lap of the race last time out. Gap holding at about 2 seconds right now, coming down underneath that 2 right now as we come with about 6.5 minutes to go. The number 4 versus the number 6. The battle still very much on. Ronaldo Carlos on the button here, trying to extend that gap if he can, give himself some breathing room, if at all possible.
Yeah, absolutely, going down to 3 push-to passes now and really has extended the gap. Look at it, it's given him, what, 1 second down this straight towards the hairpin. Goes in a bit too deep because, again, that extra speed, you do well, underestimate how good your brakes actually are, or overestimate how good your brakes actually are into that hairpin. They're going a little bit too deep, but the gap's still 2.3. Carlos could use another push-to-pass perhaps and make it equal, but the gap, you know, still one of the closest it's been. Velo has, you know, made a statement in setting that fast lap. He said, I can match you on a good lap, and I am here, so do not make a mistake, because I will pick up the pieces very, very quickly indeed. But you can see Velo, we saw it in turn 1 at the start of this lap, went a little bit too wide, and now he's seeing a chance of things to happen. This is when desperation starts to kick in. It's something every racing driver is a bit guilty of as he goes through the Mobil 1 curve. Goes a little bit wide over the sausage, just the normal curving into the gravel, and that again ruins his momentum. So it's this is where the desperation starts to creep in for him, which is unfortunate, but he needs to get his head down, needs to keep it cool, and needs to keep doing what he's been doing.
Indeed, he does just get to what he needs to do here. As I will say, over the last lap, it looks like Carlos has been able to pull out a little bit more of a gap. Definitely stretching that advantage. 0.7 of a second faster on the last lap as we take down with under 5 minutes to go. Watch for Alex Velo here to try to see what he can do to close that gap in. It's back up to 2.6 seconds right now. They work their way through the Parabolica entry and onto this long straightaway, and it looks like Velo is going to be on the button. He is going to be on push to pass, trying to close back in. But this is his penultimate use of that button. He only has one more push to pass left to go, whereas Ronaldo Carlos has 3. Is that the deciding factor in this race? Has Velo been a little bit too greedy on the button, and it's going to come back to bite him here in the closing stages?
Absolutely will. Even if he can get into the slipstream range, the draft range, and tuck into the back of Carlos, it's not going to do anything, because Carlos can just say, okay, I'm going to push this button now, I'm going to soar off into the distance, and there's not really much Velo can do to it. He can't magic up some straight line speed out of nowhere, because he hasn't got the extra power from the push to pass. And that's where, as you say, in that midpoint of the race where he used it, well, arguably very unnecessarily, because he had no pressure from behind. He had no pressure. He couldn't put any pressure forward. We got a bit of side-by-side action between Valente and Magalhães as they go in towards Mercedes. A first bit of side-by-side action in quite a while. Valente managing to get himself into 4th, but here comes Magalhães in towards Mercedes. Bit of contact. These cars are very sensitive. You cannot be doing that.
No, you cannot. And Valente there, coming out the worse for wear as we check back in on that battle for the lead. Ronaldo Carlos coming to the line here. If my math is correct, this should be 2 to go for the number 6 for the Brazilian driver as he finds his way through the north curve. The gap holding at about 2.2 seconds. Right now, Velo able to take 0.3 of a second out on that last lap, but I have to think here with those 2 laps to go and 3 pushes to pass remaining for Ronaldo Carlos, he will get on that button, and indeed he gets on it now, trying to extend that gap up from about 2 seconds. It's going upwards more and more as Velo not on the button, Ronaldo Carlos is.
Yeah, absolutely. That start really helped him to consolidate this comfortable, what we can safely assume should be a victory. Only a couple of laps left to go. He's got the advantage, and that cushion that he gave himself at the start with that fantastic start from the rolling start off that final corner has allowed him to do this, because he's been the quickest, he's been the most consistent, but Alex Velo has been there. He has proven he's got the pace. So Carlos, to give himself that cushion was so crucial, and that's why you have to think about the end of the race, even on lap 1. You have to set yourself up for these moments.
Indeed, you do. You've got to be thinking with the big brain strategy this entire time. You cannot be too greedy on the push to pass or going over the curbs. You always have to be thinking about the final lap of the race, and the driver who has done that the best is Ronaldo Carlos here at this point as he comes through the Sachs curve for the penultimate time, running about 145s here, 146s, and there you see that tick down. So he will get the white flag from Barney the Flagman this time by. Only one more circuit around Hockenheim to go. The gap holding at about 2.2 seconds right now as they exit through the south curve. White flag in the air from Barney. 1 lap to go.
Yeah, and this is what we've been waiting for. Carlos is just going to be saying 16 more corners. I'm going to start counting them down. No mistakes. If I mess it up now, I'm going to be kicking myself, because he's done a phenomenal job, being so consistent, has been completely unfazed by the pressure of Alex Velo, who's now using his push to pass as sort of a final ditch effort to try and get onto the back of Carlos, give him any slither of hope that he possibly can in order to win this race. Get closer, get into the slipstream range, but I don't think it's quite going to be enough. He's closing the gap very quickly, but again, he's just going to run out of opportunities. Time is not on his side. Gap under 1 second. He's there, but Carlos can just respond. Not much really he can do with a push to pass, but certainly will help where it counts.
Indeed it will, and that push to pass will remain in effect as he brakes. Remember, it's not like DRS, so if he wants to use it here to just try to extend that gap a little bit on the straightaways, he certainly can. The little straightaways as he comes into the final portions of the lap. We ride on board with Alex Velo, though, as he tries to get that corner and get that car as close to Ronaldo Carlos as possible. He's got the gap at about 0.8 of a second, but as we said, Carlos still has 2 pushes to pass remaining. They fling these Brazilian stock cars cars down through the Mobile 1 curve. Very, very aggressive there is Alex Bello, just trying to catch up. 0.5 of a second now in between the two. They go down through the Sachs curve, trying to see if there's any advantage to be had this last little fiddly bit of corners as they come around. Big chunk of the curve, trying to make an attack. There is Velo at the last possible minute, but he's going to shoot it wide. They come through the south curve, and leading the way as he has done since the checkered flag, it will be Ronaldo Carlos taking victory here at Hockenheim. Alex Velo will follow him behind in second.
Now, that was very tense. Carlos was definitely, he was looking behind him for that last sequence of corners. Alex Velo did a great job to just have a last-ditch go at Ronaldo Carlos there. But yeah, fantastic job to him. He kept it consistent, completely unfazed, and a lot of drivers in that final thing would have panicked and just thought it's over, because Alex Velo was just on it on that last lap. But Carlos, no, kept a cool head, kept it clean, and brought it home for a very well-deserved victory.
He did indeed, as we wait now for the final couple of drivers to come across the line. Aurelian Schmidt, the first driver to finish a lap down, just waiting for Andre Suenga to come across now. But you cannot say enough about that man, Ronaldo Carlos. There is Suenga as we wait for him to come across, working his way through the final couple of corners, lining it up into the south curve. The number 7 machine will bring that car across and will be the last driver to finish here today at the Hockenheimring, and that will bring us to your unofficial results. As we said, Ronaldo Carlos able to take a commanding victory, although it was a little bit tense there at the end between himself and Alex Velo. And Jeffrey Tamietto there rounding out your podium positions. There you can see it. Megales coming home in 4th, Valente in 5th, Suenga 6th. The last car on the lead lap, Aurelian Schmidt in 7th, and Guto de Carvalho. What a sad story there for him. 5 laps down after an internet disconnect. I would have loved to have seen that battle play itself out.
Yeah, absolutely. We were certainly robbed of a good fight for second place there, and it really would have spiced that race up just a little bit more. Maybe we wouldn't have that last lap showdown between Alex Velo and Carlos, but yeah, that is heartbreak. He's and it's one of those things that it's not in his control. If he spun out and made a mistake, then you sort of just shrug it off. But the fact that it wasn't his fault is, of course it's racing and it's one of those things, but certainly it's going to be very frustrating for him.
Certainly will be very, very frustrating for him, but that is going to end another race for us. As we said earlier, come back with us next week. Let's take a look at that schedule for the Stock Car Brasil series, as we will be back at Mount Panorama. But this has been a production of RaceSpotTV. My name is DJ Clark, and as for Zach Sweeney here in the booth with me, as well as Connery Maddock behind the scenes, we would like to thank you for joining us here today at the Hockenheimring. And until we see you on the track, thanks for watching.